So we've already seen one title unified with the Universal and WWE Championship. Another one going to be unified with the Tag Team Championships for Raw and SmackDown. And a lot of people talking on the internet whether or not this is going to end the brand split and if it's a good idea that WWE ends the brand split. We'll talk about it next on the Squared Circle Psycho Babble. My name is Michael Valenti. Joining me is Ralph Valenti. Ralph, should WWE end the brand split?
No. I do not think they should end the brand split. I think that the brand split, for one, and for starters, is done with the very specific intent of ensuring certain wrestlers are on certain shows so they can have their fan base dedicated to one show or the other. Some fans will watch both, but you know that those who are going to tune into SmackDown are tuning in maybe to see Roman Reigns. Some people that are tuning into Raw are tuning in maybe to see, let's say, Kevin Owens or Cody Rhodes or somebody of that nature. I think that there's a little more at play behind the scenes as far as like networks and stuff like that determining, because I think that was one of the big things, right? Fox wanted Roman Reigns, Charlotte Flair, Ronda Rousey, like those types of things are happening and they don't want talent going back and forth. So there's that business side of it. But the one thing that I like most about not having the brand split end right now is because Roman Reigns is the unified champion. Last night was probably one of the more enjoyable Raws that I've seen in quite some time because they were forced and put in position where they had to be a little more creative. They had to kind of go through each storyline and determine, okay, we don't have just some champion that we can float out there and have go out there and cut a promo and talk about how they're the heavyweight champion. We need to now promote the US championship. And we also need to promote the tag championship, which means more TV time for RK Bro. I'm not complaining about that. That just means they're going to be the focal point of Raw. It also means that a good young guy like Theory can get a little more attention and a little more shine, and that can elevate that title. Then you look at some of the sub-tier stuff, or as you go kind of down the storyline progression there, we saw Ali come back last night. He was given an opportunity to shine a little bit. We saw Edge, and we saw his sidekick there now, Damian Priest. They're doing their thing. Not having a champion there, while it's different and it may make things a little more challenging from a creative standpoint, that's a good thing because it means they can afford more time to certain storylines and put certain titles on a pedestal and make them feel a little more prominent.
I think a lot of what you say makes a lot of sense, but I also think it's also the reason why they should end the brand split. One, if I'm the network, what I want to make sure the ratings are maximized so that we could sell advertising at the top dollar and make the most money for when they are on our network. Mm-hmm. So if NBC wants the highest ratings for Raw, you bet your ass Roman Reigns better be on that Raw. You bet your ass Cody Rhodes is on that Raw. You bet your ass Drew McIntyre's on that Raw. Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, whoever is going to be good and help with the ratings, regardless of brand, is going to be on these shows. Now, during the Attitude Era, was there a brand split? No. Austin was on Raw. Austin was on SmackDown. The Rock was on Raw. The Rock was on SmackDown. Undertaker was on Raw. Undertaker's on SmackDown.
Attitude Era was just a weird time where people were invested in the product so much that everything was can't miss TV. What was Austin going to do next? What was Undertaker going to do? What was Rock going to do? You had to watch every single week, every single show, whether it was once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. All those guys were on each show, and you never got sick of it. As good as Roman is, as good as Kevin Owens is, as good as some of those guys are, I can't say that seeing more of them is going to be as interesting or more interesting. I don't want to see Roman Reigns on Monday Night Raw every week and then tune in on Friday and see him on Friday night on SmackDown. I like only being able to see him once a week because I don't think I'm going to get sick of his act.
But
right
if he's a unified champion, he better be on both shows.
I don't think he needs to be. I think that he could very simply say the true champion in WWE resides at SmackDown, and anybody that wants to challenge for it can feel free to come over whenever they want. I think by unifying the championships, whether it ends up being just the tag championship and the heavyweight championship, it opens the door for Roman going over to Raw whenever he wants to. He'll always have the ability to do that, but he doesn't necessarily have to do that. And
right, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, Maybe maybe I'm overemphasizing on like they should be on both shows, but what I really should say, let me rephrase it a little bit, is that Roman has the opportunity to go on both shows, and all these other guys have the opportunity to go on both shows instead of having that limitation where Drew McIntyre only could be on SmackDown. If Drew McIntyre wants to have a match on Raw, or they want to have him have a match on Raw, let him have a match on Raw. And then maybe he just cuts a backstage promo on SmackDown. What's wrong with that? He doesn't have to have a match on both. And Roman Reigns doesn't need to be featured on both shows, but it helps if, especially if he's the top guy, he should be on both shows like Cena was, or like Austin was, or whoever the top guy. Like, they're on every show. Almost, they're not missing an episode for the most part. Maybe a day or here and there off, but
I think that they can get to that point. I think their biggest flaw right now, especially when you're talking about the heavyweight championship title picture, is there aren't really too many credible challengers, right? You have probably Drew McIntyre right now, who's he's right there. I would say if they wanted to kind of build a storyline around him, it would only take a couple of weeks to put him back in that position to challenge. Lesnar could technically come back whenever he wants and be put right back into that picture. But, when's he coming back, if he's coming back? And then from that point, you have to start building guys up. I don't think it does good for Roman Reigns, especially, to go over to Raw and challenge guys if they're not ready, just for the sake of, he needs a new challenger. Let him.
But there's plenty of guys he could challenge on Raw that he hasn't
are ready for it, that are ready for that moment.
Yes.
Like who?
Edge.
Seen it.
Seth Rollins. I know we've seen him already, but
Kevin Owens, seen it.
AJ Styles.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, AJ Styles, I'll buy it, but let's finish this storyline. I love what Edge is doing right now, and I like the storyline they're doing. So why not let Roman do his thing on SmackDown? Let this storyline develop, because let's not overlook the fact of this. If Roman goes to Raw, let's guesstimate how much time dedicated to him. Right, on Raw, he's going to come out, probably open the show, maybe close the show. Let's say 20 minutes with commercials and everything.
Yeah.
Now, that's 20 minutes that you could have maybe dedicated towards somebody who's been doing really good. Let's say Alpha Academy, right? They're doing good. There's somebody that I like to tune into Raw every week and watch. So does it take away from their time on Raw? Does it take away from Theory's time? Does it take away from Edge's storyline? You're saying no, but it's got to take away from a storyline. Ali.
No, it doesn't, because they could take whatever time they lose on Raw, they can move to SmackDown on Friday. They don't have the limitation anymore with the brand split. If they want to have Alpha Academy on, they don't necessarily have to be on both nights, but, all right, Roman's going to be on. He's going to take 20 minutes. All right, we'll take some of these guys that were on Raw and we'll have a tag team match. It helps creativity in the tag team division, because SmackDown barely has a tag team division. Outside of the Usos and the Los Lotharios, who are the tag teams on Smack? Oh, the New Day. So Alpha Academy versus the New Day that week, and start a program with them. They have their first, little bit of that feud on SmackDown, and then they put the next part of the story on Raw, and then maybe they skip that SmackDown and then go to next week's Raw, and then it goes like they don't necessarily have to relegate themselves to one show and just let things breathe. Like, things can actually breathe for a while without the brand split, I think. The only way a brand split works, obviously we're seeing the first part of it, is unify the titles and those champions go back and forth.
Yeah.
So if Roman right now, say Drew McIntyre is challenging for the title, the next step would be you got to set up a number one contender for Raw so that when he beats Drew, who's ready on Raw? Meanwhile, you have the next number one contender set up on SmackDown and go back and forth. That's the only way it's going to work. If you can't do that, just merge all the rosters together and just build that upper mid card so that you can have the next guy up regardless of what damn brand he's on.
Yeah, for starters, I don't trust WWE doing it. I don't know if they have a good track record.
That's why I say end the brand split, because the way I think the brand split would work, they won't do. So just get rid of it.
I don't know. I just feel like, oversaturation, too much Roman Reigns, too much Usos, too much Bloodline. I'll tell you who I would like to see on both nights. I'd more than happily take Pat McAfee doing commentary both nights, and I'm not even joking about it. But based on what I saw on Raw last night, was a good example of, if you take the heavyweight championship out of that picture, you're able to elevate certain championships and make those the focal point. RK Bro, Randy Orton, 20 years, all this stuff. That was great. That was good. And they were able to kind of work certain other storylines in there. Seth and Cody, that's kind of going on. The stuff with Theory, that's going on. Edge and Ali. Let those things kind of develop on their own show. We don't need Roman Reigns involved in all that to promote the show and go back and forth.
He doesn't need to be. He doesn't need to be on both. Like, he doesn't necessarily need to be on both shows to help elevate both. He just needs to be on to help with the ratings for both Raw and SmackDown. And I think taking him on both shows, I know some fans are not going to like that because it's too much Roman Reigns, yada, yada, yada. But guy's the top star. You got to have him, intertwine with different wrestlers. On Raw, if he's on Raw and he starts his storyline with Drew McIntyre, what's wrong with him? Like, that storyline going on both shows.
Wouldn't it mean more for that storyline to happen for like a month and a half? Let's assume Roman comes out of that as champion still. And for that month and a half, you're building up something else on Raw. So that way, if you want to do like a cross promotional thing, whether it's Kevin Owens or Randy Orton, somebody's now lined up for him. And it doesn't mean he has to go back and forth to do that or set it up. And you don't run the risk of having oversaturation with Roman and taking time away from some of the younger stars or other storylines that are developing. So I just don't think that the fans want it. And I don't think that it's something that WWE
our community poll would disagree with you, because I think like 70% said they would say end the brand split.
Yeah, but then as soon as Roman showed up on Raw, they'd be like, oh, it's too much Roman Reigns. He's overrated. Who's he going to wrestle? There's not enough credible champ. So on and so. It's the same thing. It always happens. But
as much as I've always said, you don't necessarily have to end the brand split, do it this way. I just don't see them doing it that way where, the top champion goes on both shows, the tag team champions go on both shows, Raw, the women's champion goes on both shows, and then you just intertwine the number one contender storylines in between. They're not going to do it that way. So if you end the brand split, you could keep storylines consistent, keep things fresh. That's all I'm saying. If you look at the top of the card and just think, oh, it's Roman, I could see where you're coming at. But if I have a storyline with Cody and I'm building up Cody, you have Seth Rollins. But then what happens after that? If you end the brand split, you have more opportunities for him to challenge people and wrestle people outside of just Seth Rollins. Now, granted, because he's new, you can have him do a thing with Edge next, or Lashley next, or Omos, or whoever. But again, if you merge the rosters back, now, okay, Cody Rhodes against Sami Zayn. Cody Rhodes against Baron Corbin. I know some people won't like that, but Corbin's an upper mid-card heel on SmackDown. Maybe that's Gunther's first real feud. People will object to it at first because they hate change. But I think in the end, WWE will benefit from it. And not only just from a creative standpoint, I would almost guarantee it will boost the ratings.
Maybe in the short term, long term, I don't know. But
let us know in the comments what you think. Should WWE end that brand split? Don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, SCPB Podcast. Subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble.